Next on HBO. John McClane is back, and he's having a bad day. And that's good news. Bruce Willis stars in the box office smash, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Something special's on next.
Imagine a place that gets hotter when the sun goes down.
Here we go now.
HBO is going to Miami, and look who's coming with us. Gloria Estefan, World Championship Boxing, the HBO Comedy Hour Jon Stewart, and Inside the NFL. Now imagine you can come too. In the HBO Miami Weekend Sweepstakes, one grand prize winner will take an all-expense-paid trip to Miami for a behind-the-scenes experience at the biggest sports events, the best comedy show, and a VIP party. Then top off the weekend with tickets to Gloria Estefan, the Evolution Tour, live in Miami. To enter, send your name, address, and age on a postcard to HBO Miami Weekend Sweepstakes, P.O. Box 8865, Westport, Connecticut, 06888. For a complete set of rules, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to HBO Miami Weekend Sweepstakes Rules Request, P.O. Box 8830, Westport, Connecticut, 06888. Don't miss the HBO Miami Weekend, and don't miss your chance to be a winner. It could happen to anyone. Suddenly, you're locked inside your head.
Nobody knew, you know.
Tortured by unseen demons.
There's this voice in my head named Andrew, you know, it's telling me to do all these things.
And you may never make it out.
Is there anything you want to say or ask me?
America Undercover explores the latest experimental treatments.
We actually destroy a small part of the brain. That is hyperactive.
Closer than anyone has been.
There's nothing worse in this world than losing your sanity.
How many will come back from madness? The struggle for sanity. Premieres Tuesday, September 17th on HBO.
Poor little baby is kidnapped and murdered. Somebody must die for it. You find a poor fool of a carpenter who has some of the ransom money. You don't believe a word he says. You don't believe his wife. You stop looking for everyone else.
A man accused.
Bruno Richard Hauptmann.
This is all a mistake.
I want a confession, and he will confess.
How can he confess to a crime he did not commit?
The woman who loved him.
I've never lied to you. Never. I will always believe you, my love.
A nation that demanded justice.
You better start talking or you are a dead man!
Doesn't a guy have to be convicted before he's found guilty?
At any cost.
When he gets strapped into that chair, he will talk.
Is that the kind of justice that you want?
I am innocent.
Stephen Ray. Isabella Rossellini.
Hauptmann is innocent. A whole lot of people are guilty.
Crime of the century. The untold story of the Lindbergh kidnapping.
You lied, didn't you? No, sir, I'm not telling lies. You're telling lies. All of you.
Premieres Saturday night at 8. Only on HBO.
If you were to walk into a home and start to peel back the layers of paint and be able to just sit there and hear the stories that would be told to you, what would we learn? What would we know?
It was all set in the same location. That's what tied these three stories together. No matter what side you take, these stories give you a chance to see what the person's having to go through.
There was a strength and a vulnerability that I felt that Cher had that made me very excited that she really wanted to step into this.
My job as a director is to give them everything that they need so that they can do that part themselves. This is a special project too because it's not just a woman's issue, it's a human issue.
If these walls could talk, with something that will affect all of our lives.
Entertainment news in 60 seconds. Filming has begun on the HBO original movie A Maiden's Grave, starring James Garner and Marlee Matlin. In this thriller, Garner negotiates the release of a group of deaf children from ruthless killers. But no such tactics were necessary to get him on board.
I read the script, and if I think it's an entertaining script, then I'll do it. And I like the character.
Director Spike Lee turns his camera on baseball's bad boy Albert Bell.
I'm not saying people are going to love Albert Bell after they see this piece, but I think they will be sympathetic to what he goes through.
The two-part profile will air this month on HBO's Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel. Whoopi Goldberg gets to kick up her heels in the new movie Bogus, but that's nothing compared to 10 years of co-hosting Comic Relief.
Being able to come out in a Rockette uniform and doing a high kick with the Rockettes was pretty groovy.
Look back at a decade of love and laughter with Comic Relief's 10th anniversary special this fall on HBO. And that's the Entertainment News Minute.
Next on HBO, John McClane is back and he's having a bad day. And that's good news. Bruce Willis stars in the box office smash, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Something Special's on next.
Something Special's on HBO. Something chilling. Something funny.
Sandwich?
Something powerful.
What has he done? I'm not telling lies. You're telling lies.
I want a confession, and he will confess.
Something dangerous.
Oh, I love it.
Something thrilling. Something moving.
Go back to England. Tell them Scotland is free.
HBO. Something Special's on in September.
How far up the dial do you have to go to get the ratings?
There's a whole city of perversion down there.
How much electricity do you have to generate?
Are you wearing any clothes right now?
Just some panties.
Take them off.
To put the shock.
I want to hear about the nastiest crimes you've gotten away with.
Into shock radio.
Are you saying that you killed her?
Yeah.
We gotta top ourselves, otherwise we're gonna lose our numbers.
Eric Roberts. Power 98. The Friday world premiere at 10 o'clock on HBO. Late on a Saturday night, the action gets hot. You try to make a name for yourself, and there's no holding back. HBO Boxing After Dark. Kennedy McKinney versus Nestor Lopez. Undefeated junior featherweight champion Marco Antonio Barrera versus top contender Jesse Magana. Live Saturday night at 11:30. HBO Boxing After Dark. Some of the best in the business work the night shift.
You don't know where it will come from.
Target approaching kill zone.
Target approaching kill zone.
You don't know who.
Why did they have to send you?
Because I get along with everybody.
You don't know how.
Fasten your seatbelt.
You don't know when.
Just do it.
You're all grown up now. You do it.
All you know
Terminated.
is that you won't hear a thing. Dolph Lundgren, Silent Trigger. The Friday world premiere. September 27th on HBO. Major motion movies.
The price is $40,000. You've got 20 minutes. Give or take 10 seconds.
Killed him to be number one.
We did it. We're in.
Today I become number one.
Sylvester Stallone, Antonio Banderas, Assassins. Coming in October on HBO.
Step outside. I'll set you free.
HBO is barreling into Miami for the weekend. Watch out, September 19th through the 22nd.
The following movie is rated R.
Great, we're back. This is Vince, and this is part 2 of my HBS tips for the entering class of 2015. Those of you who are trying to graduate in 2015, so entering Harvard in 2013. And let's get started. If you didn't watch part 1 of the video, I'll just briefly reintroduce myself. My name is Vince, and my website is vinceprep.com. I am an admissions advisor and counselor and coach, and I help people apply to business schools. I've been doing this for 10 years. My Harvard results are pretty good. I have 10 clients who got in there in the last 5 years. That's roughly 2 per year. Some years it's more, some years it's less. You can see my detailed results at vinceprep.com, my website, and 15 total in the decade that I've been doing this work. And that doesn't include people that come to me only for interview training. I do a lot of interview training for Harvard and other schools. That's also on my website, and I don't count those in these results. I only count the people who come to me for more of a comprehensive service. All right, how do I help people get into Harvard? I'll talk more at the end of this video about it, but I have 2 core methods. One is critical thinking, and the other is storytelling, and I'll be getting into those in a bit. But most importantly, I guess for you, you're wondering about these essays, I assume is one of your major concerns, and I understand that. I talked about essay 1 in part 1, and so I'm going to talk about essay 2 now. Essay 2, the question, tell us about something you wish you had done better. Something you wish you had done better. So this could be something that didn't go well, it didn't go as planned. It could be you failed to achieve the result. You encountered mistakes that others made or that you made. Setbacks occurred beyond your control, but things you wish you had either done the work better or managed other people's expectations better or your own expectations, communicated something about it. It's something that didn't go well, and hopefully, and they don't say this, but I think it's implied, you learned something from the experience. Admissions officers play many different roles. They play roles, they play all kinds of roles. Some of the roles they play are really fun and exciting. This is the glamorous part of admissions. They might disagree with me. Maybe traveling isn't fun for them anymore, but looks fun. They travel the world. They do seminars at nice hotels or nice places. They meet alumni. They meet excited, eager applicants like you. They get to speak to hundreds of people who are paying very close attention, being very polite and respectful, and they get to feel really important, and they get to talk about the school and promote the school, and that can be a really fun job, I think, if you work at a place like Harvard. It's also a very hard job, I imagine, especially around deadline season, and one of the most important things that I think they take very seriously is they have to avoid admitting you if they think you can't do the work, and that's why they look at your undergraduate academic record and they look at your test scores. If they don't think you can graduate, or even you might graduate but you just would hate the experience, if you can't handle the environment, it's their job to deny you. That's a responsibility they have to the school, because they don't want unhappy customers, if you will. And you, the applicant, are their customer. The hardest part, I think, of all is the really vague part about culture. So that it's easy enough to look at the numbers and get a feeling or have a clear red flag that this person's TOEFL is just too low. We're not confident they can survive in this fast-paced, discussion-based environment, or the undergraduate performance just isn't there, or the GMAT in combination with the undergraduate performance really causes them to worry that even if you took courses in the summer, there's just no way that you're going to stay afloat in, doing 10 cases a week or whatever you've got to do while you're there. 500 cases total in 2 years is a lot of work, and it's a lot of the same kind of work. And so that's easy enough to determine and say no based on that. It's harder to determine if you fit their culture. This essay helps them decide if you fit the Harvard culture, because if you can't learn from your mistakes, they don't want you. Well, first of all, if you can't admit you have mistakes, well, let me back it up even further. If you don't make any mistakes, it means you're not pushing yourself. You're not ambitious at all, and they don't want you. If you make no mistakes, you're too conservative for Harvard. I'm sorry, but it's true. You make no mistakes whatsoever in your life. You're perfect. They don't want you there because you're not You're not making change. Change is hard. Change comes with mistakes. So if you're not pushing yourself to make changes, that's one thing. They're not interested in people that don't push themselves. I also think they're not interested in people who make mistakes and can't admit it. Not going to work out in the Harvard cohort. That kind of person is going to not have a lot of friends. It's going to make a lot of people upset. I'm always right. I insist that I'm right. Hard to be around those kind of people. And harder still to be around somebody who admits they're wrong sometimes, but then can't learn lessons from it, because then that's just really frustrating, right? Great that you tried new things. Fine that you don't always succeed. But even worse of all, you do try new things, you fail a lot, and you never learn. That's just sad, right? So you try new stuff, you sometimes fall down, you always get up. And when you get up, you're smarter next time. That kind of person's ideal to have in a team, in a company, at the head of an organization. That's a good person. So this essay shows leadership potential in that sense. And I think it's a filter for them. They're using this essay to decide if you fit their culture. I'll give a quick example of my own. If you watched part 1, you know my whole saga about the pizza restaurant, which I just made up to give you something to think about as I talk about this more abstract. This kind of essay should have these 3 parts. I'm giving you examples that are silly and easy to understand, hopefully to make that clearer, that message clearer. Let me give you the theory, and then let me give you the example, and let me explain it. Here's my theory about these kinds of essays, where I tried to do something and it didn't go well, as I wish it had gone better. A story's only interesting if there was some kind of damage. I made a cake and it just didn't look right. I'm not going to get you into Harvard, that story. There was no damage. There was no lost time. There was no money. There was no lost money. There was no lost reputation. There was no damage. So I wish I had done something better. I wish my cake, it didn't rise enough. And I don't make cakes, by the way, and I don't belittle you if you do make cakes. Cakes are great. I love to eat cakes. I wish I could make cakes. But, my cake just didn't turn out well, but I improved my recipe. Cool, but there's no damage. It's just about you and the people who eat your cake, okay? The second thing that it needs is some amount of personal responsibility. So it can't just be a setback like an act of nature that I had nothing to do with, and I didn't deal well with the situation. It's also not that happens, but it's not. You're not taking ownership of it enough. It's too far away. So again, it may show me that you have the qualities that we're looking for. Those issues, that you take risks, willing to admit mistakes, and are willing to learn from them. But if something is so far away from you that you just had nothing to do with, a flood, which is tragic, right? And scary, but maybe it was the way you dealt with it. Okay, fine. But something I wish had gone better. I wish the flood hadn't happened. Not enough about you. I'm not learning about you. So your responsibility for some damage that's real. Something was lost. So it matters. And the third thing is, it's not so easy to just bounce back from. Something I wish I had done better, but the next day I changed a few things in my recipe and my cake came out fluffy and delicious. Wonderful, great, eat the cake, enjoy the cake. But I'll stop talking about the cake. It's too simple, it's too quick, it's too easy. I don't believe that you grew, and again, it gets back to learning lessons. real lessons, real setbacks, real bad things that happen take a long time to grow from, and growth takes time if it's real. And the fourth thing, and this is optional, not every essay has this, because not every story has this piece. If there's no good example, don't make one up, or don't fake it if it's not there. But if possible, show proof of learning. So last time with the cake example, that's a stupid, really stupid example. Again, nothing wrong with cake, but proof of learning. Now I make that cake every day, and it's always tasty and delicious and fluffy. Proof of learning. Here's a piece. Proof of learning. I learned the lesson that I fixed the cake and it came out nice. All right? Silly example. I'm going to move on from there. I'm not going to... Well... See how quickly I can do this. I was going to talk about my pizza restaurant, and then I guess I'm hungry because I'm talking about food all the time. I will give a super quick example that if you watched part 1, and my goal was to take my family pizza restaurant nationwide, and my accomplishment essay 1, my achievement leadership was involving the younger generation by getting them to share innovative ideas, empowering them to implement those innovative ideas, seeing the success of those innovative ideas, and now I'm passing the business on when I come to business school. My younger cousin, Tony, or whatever, is going to take over. Let me give you a quick story about what that would look like if it was a topic for a setback essay, which it probably shouldn't be. But let me just, again, give a quick silly example. So a setback good story here would be something I wish I'd gone better. I wish I had done a better job of helping Tony understand my expectations of him, and also, getting him to take more initiative earlier on. So this story would be about things I tried to do to excite him or involve him or engage him, and it didn't go well, and we wasted a lot of time. And there was one really bad day where there were no tomatoes in the kitchen, and I blamed him because I thought he had forgotten to order the tomatoes. In fact, it wasn't his fault. There was a shortage of tomatoes, or the delivery truck didn't come, or there was a flood. There's the flood again. Anyway, I blamed him. So the point was our communication was bad, and he almost quit, or maybe he did quit. Maybe Tony quit, and then thank goodness there was, there was young, there was young Joe. Joe stepped in. Lost Tony, I got Joe. I learned from the mistake I'd made with Tony. I pushed him too hard. I didn't incentivize him. I was too critical. I wasn't constructive. I wasn't helpful enough. And I learned it. Tony's doing okay. He did something else. He's happier now. He became an accountant. It's what he wanted to do anyway. He really wasn't into this family business idea. He doesn't even like pizza, whatever. His little brother Joe, or my other cousin Joe, younger guy Joe's taken over, and all the mistakes I made with my cousin Tony, I didn't make those mistakes with cousin Joe. I don't have cousins named Joe or Tony, by the way. And Joe's taken over. So again, you can't use these 3 stories. It's for a Harvard application. It's pretty stupid, but I'm just giving you the feeling of that story. There was damage, right? I didn't include that part. We lost business, and I lost reputation with Tony. He quit, and that set us back. Right? I couldn't move on, or I couldn't expand the business until he was in place, and he left. I was responsible. My attitude with him was wrong. Our communication was bad from the get-go because my assumptions were wrong. I didn't communicate. I didn't find out what he wanted from this. I didn't really think enough about how to motivate him and work with him. I was a young manager. I was still in college, whatever. Taking on more responsibility in the family business, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I made some mistakes. It's been years since then, but Joe is the proof that I learned the lesson with Tony. So that quick, dumb story has all my 4 pieces to it. And it's, therefore, a passable story from that perspective. But it's got a lot of other problems if you were working out as your essay. Here's some stuff to brainstorm, because you want your own example. And again, as I said in part 1, authenticity is really important. And keeping this stuff, your essay in your own voice, is what matters most to me, because I know it matters to AdCom. So think of your own story, of course, here's some stuff to get you started. Do I wish I had done better in some of the following situations? Think about times you've been in teams that didn't, things you wish you had done a better job in a team. You wish you had done a better job working with people from another culture or another function, right? Culture is pretty obvious. Function is, with my sales guy or with I'm in sales, they're in marketing. We didn't never get along. Usually they don't. I'm back office, front office. Functional groups have tension all the time. And I wish it had gone better. I wish I had managed my time better, or I wish I had managed someone else's time better. I misunderstood someone else's expectations of time of me, or my expectations of them were bad or wrong, and it caused problems. I wish I had done a better job with that. I learned the lesson, and handling details. Do you get caught up in details do you get lost in the details, or do you forget the details? Either one could be a problem. Do you forget to consider the larger context of your actions? Do you get so micro-focused that you forget to take a step back and realize, if I'm really hard on Tony, probably he's not going to like it, and he might quit. Or I didn't consider the fact that he's having trouble at home, or he's having trouble, he's in school and he's struggling with his classes. I didn't take the context of my actions of yelling at him because we had no tomatoes. Stupid example. I avoided giving bad news. Hey, Tony, we have no tomatoes. I didn't tell him, and then that night we couldn't deliver any pizzas, and we lost a bunch of customers. Angry customers, we lost time and money because I forgot. I didn't want to tell him. Last time I told him we're out of tomatoes, he got mad, and so I avoid him. I lost energy to see something through. I didn't start something well. I didn't persist well enough. I didn't close something well. I couldn't persuade younger people. I couldn't influence older people, seniors. Or again, the last one is sort of a catch-all thing. I didn't ask for help. I lacked the skills I needed. I should have asked for someone's help talking to Tony. I know that Joe, his younger brother, they have a great relationship, and I've always gotten along really well with Joe. If I had talked to Joe, maybe Joe could have talked to Tony, and that probably would have been better. I was too proud. I'm older, and I thought and I had the title, and I was too proud to ask for help, or whatever. I needed help with something in finance, and I'm not in finance, and I didn't knock on the finance guy's door. I tried to do it all myself, and it didn't go well. Those are some stories to get you thinking. Finally, here's some challenges, or here's some issues when you show this essay to other people. It could be me, a friend, a mentor, an advisor of any kind, someone who's nice enough or professional enough to read your essay and criticize it and give you some feedback on how to make it better. Here's what you should be asking of the people reading your essays. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? Is this clear? If you read this essay, if you understand it, would you want me on your team? Do I appear to be a person that you'd want to work with? Why or why not? Do you believe that I learned any lesson? Is the lesson that I learned from this experience believable? Do you believe it? Can you see it? And if you were my mentor, right? If you were, or maybe this person is your mentor, if you'd been with me at that time and you'd been my supervisor, or you'd been a friend, even a peer, what should be my next lesson after I learned how to communicate with, the younger guys to empower them instead of scare them away or, make them mad? It should have empowered them and involved them. I learned that lesson. What's next? If I'm going to run my nationwide pizza place, what's the next challenge I'm going to face? Because I'll have 100 staff or 1,000 or 10,000 staff at that point if I'm the CEO of this global or national operation of Vinny's Pizza or whatever this place is called. What types of activities and behaviors should I engage in to try to learn the next set of lessons? This gets into like YMBA stuff, and I'm not suggesting you put it in your essay, but these kind of questions and the content that comes out of these conversations may or may not make it into your final draft, but the process of talking about those kinds of issues will deepen your logic and deepen your story, and deep stories that are authentic and real and interesting and clear and simple are always, always better. If you don't believe me, read D. Leopold's instructions in the online application form or in her blog about what she's looking for in essays. If you don't believe me, I hope you will believe the people who will decide whether or not you get into their school. All right, additional information. Let me jump over. Let me hide my face, and let me jump over and go back to my matrix here. And let me just rearrange a couple of things so this will look a little better. Yep. So here's my little chart of joy that compares the 5 top schools, top meaning most selective meaning they admit the fewest people, 7%, Stanford, 13%, Harvard, and Wharton. A lot of schools have 13% admit rate, but yield is the other criteria for that, and Harvard's got the highest, 90%. 90% of those who Harvard sends a admission offer to say, "Thank you, Harvard. Here's my money. I'm coming." So, application data stuff. We talked about that. It is important in part 1. Why MBA? Not as important. We talked about why it's not as important in Harvard, given their decision to turn it from an essay into a short question, and not even in the essay section, in the application data, in the experience section, which I think is an interesting and probably logical choice, but it's a bold choice, and to me it says that Harvard is not super concerned about your goals. That doesn't mean, though, that they must be clear. If you watch my Columbia video, I have this analogy about sushi. Goals are rice. If you're eating nigiri, right, a roll. I mean, not a roll. A piece of rice, a beautiful lump of rice, a boat of rice, if you will, right? A shaped rice stand, if you will, that's holding up the tuna or the whatever is on top. The eel, which I like as well, right? The rice is on the bottom, the eel is on the top, and the rice better hold up, okay? It can't fall apart. It better not be too crunchy or too soft. It can't have a funny taste. It's all about the fantastic tuna, or the world's greatest unagi, on the top of the rice. But so the rice, the goal for Harvard and every school, must be clear and believable, but it doesn't have to be exciting. It just simply has to be logical and believable and just ambitious enough to be worthy of a Harvard MBA in their eyes. So there is no why Harvard, and that gets back to the 90% yield. They have the highest yield, and they don't care why you want to go to Harvard. They'll decide if you belong at Harvard. That doesn't sound like, I make it sound terrible, but it's just a fact. They don't really want to hear why you want to go to Harvard. They might ask you at the interview, but they're not going to follow up on it. There's no personal essay, although the topic of Essay 1 or Essay 2 might be of a personal nature, but there's no personal essay the way Columbia has a personal essay, or Stanford has a personal essay. Essay 1 is very personal for Stanford. The setback essay is Essay 2. So the additional information, which is down here, but beneath the letters of recommendation, which I'll talk about, I'm going a little bit out of order here. The additional information, the optional essay, for Harvard, it's not called, for Columbia, it's called optional essay. For Harvard, it's here. It's called additional information. And Harvard says, additional information is not desired, but it might be necessary. Those are my words, actually. I say, it is not desired, but it might be necessary. Harvard says, the response is limited to 500 characters, so it's the same length as your goal answer. Most of my clients don't write anything here. I'll say it again. Most of my clients do write a little something here, but it's very minimal. They don't write these, they don't necessarily even use all 500 characters, because maybe their situation is like this one down here, which is very common. Their current direct supervisor didn't write the letter of reference because the current direct supervisor doesn't know they're applying to MBA for whatever good, reason. Sometimes there's good reasons you don't tell your current supervisor about your plan. Or you just changed supervisors, or you just recently changed jobs, and your supervisor, your current direct supervisor, doesn't know you as well as your previous one. Whatever it is. You need to explain it if you don't have it, and it can be super short and super simple, and I have very specific tips about that on my website. So this hollow triangle means that it's possible, but I discourage it, because adcoms, as you can see in their language here, which I'm not going to read, but you can find this in the Harvard application form when you log in and create your identity. You'll see these words, which I got right from them. And the stuff on the bottom is not straight from Harvard. This is just a list of 4 good reasons that if you have any of these 4 issues, I will strongly encourage you to write something brief. Brief is the key word. Look, a school that cut 50% of their essays from last year to this year is giving you a message. They don't want to read a long answer that doesn't belong in anywhere in your application. If it didn't make the cut if you couldn't explain your goal in 500 characters, that's your fault. You don't use this extra place to talk more about your goal. Sorry. And another leadership accomplishment or accomplishment, no, don't use these 500 characters for that. Another setback or a time that you wish you had done something better, no. Why you love Harvard, no. No, 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 no. Only these 4 things, please. Trust me on this. Okay, recommendations. Use the questions to filter your recommender choices. In other words, look at question 3, which is green. Please describe the most important piece of constructive feedback you have given the applicant. That's you. You being the writer of the reference, the direct supervisor or former direct supervisor, or etc., etc. And by the way, again, I have tons of stuff on my website under the references section about how to choose who should write your reference. But as it relates to Harvard, pick 3 people who have something good to say when they're answering this question. This is your criteria for who should write the Harvard references for you on your behalf. If they've never given you constructive feedback that caused you to reflect and grow, much like in Essay 2 of Harvard, if they never told you something that was difficult to act on and internalize for you to actually, he told me I needed to improve something about your soft skills or your communication or your personality or your attitude. It's not overnight. He didn't say, or she didn't say, make your PowerPoint better. You could learn that. If someone teach you that, you could read a book about that. It's not a small technical thing. My macros in Excel weren't good enough. So, anyway, hard to implement. This is what I call tough love. Tough love is a big part of the Harvard culture. Tough love means, you know what tough love means, I think. It's a very American phrase, and let me just quickly explain it. It's not, bondage and whips and stuff. Tough love basically means, like a parent would do, right? I have a kid. I have a son. I love him, and I want him to be a good human being and a good citizen. And if I think he needs to learn a lesson, I don't punish him. I talk to him, and I say to him that I want him to be better. I mean, he's only 6, or he's about to be 7. So I talk slowly and clearly and simply, and I talk when he's not upset, but I talk to him as a father would talk to a kid, and should talk to a kid with love, but with some amount of hope that he'll improve. And if it's something that's hard for him to fix, I'm not talking about, cleaning up his room or something. I'm talking about, I want you to be, listen to your mother, or whatever, all these things that dads say to kids. Hard to change these behaviors, and this person likes you enough. Use the word love. Maybe it's too strong for a professional environment, but they like you enough. They believe in you enough. They want to stay in touch with you. They're a mentor who wants to be involved in your growth and development, even if you're quitting the company. They want to be, they look forward to hearing about your future success, just as a parent would, yeah? So they take time to tell you something that they know you might not like it, but you're going to need to grow from it, and you're going to need to, over a course of period of time, they're going to be watching, and they're going to be reinforcing when you're doing well, and they're going to be pointing it out in a kind way, but in a sincere and straight way when you need to hear it, that it's still not where it needs to be, and they want you to keep growing in this area. That's constructive feedback. It's a very specific kind of communication. Only close associates and supervisors and mentors and whatever, whoever's writing your references, someone who knows you very well and cares about you, only someone like that is going to write this question, is going to have something to say in this answer. Harvard, I believe, very much cares about this question. Other schools have borrowed it and use it as well in their reference letters, and I think it is the most important answer in a reference letter. So do not pick someone who can't answer this with something real and something good, okay? It matters for Harvard's culture as well because you're going to get constructive feedback in your cohort. The cohort is like a family. It self-regulates. If you're being mean to other people, they're either going to ignore you, or eventually somebody might actually pull you aside and say, I really want you to show a little more patience with so-and-so who's in our team, it's a language issue, right? Or it's a functional thing. They've never done this, or it's an age thing, or it's a whatever thing. They're just not good at communicating. They're more of a back office quant genius type, and they be more patient, please, with them when you're in our team. Only a close friend at Harvard would say that to you, but they will say it to you because that's what makes their culture great and positive, and they don't want to turn it into the stereotype of Harvard, which is cutthroat and nasty, where everybody's trying to kick each other out of like get each other expelled or fail each other out, some kind of Hogwarts or something place which has all these mean people running around it with pointy hats. So the Harvard culture is fast-paced. People will shoot you down in public. The professor will challenge you in public in front of 90 of your peers and friends who you care what they think of you. And it's never done, I think, out of spite or meanness. It's done because it's what happens when you become a CEO or the leader of a major organization. It's hard to be at the top, and your board members or your stockholders or the media or your clients are going to be angry, or your employees, or your number 2 person, or your middle managers, right? Leaders take a lot of heat. Harvard gives you a lot of heat in a relatively safe environment so you can get out into the real world and take the heat well and weather the storms that leaders experience in life, okay? All right, I've gone probably overboard on that, but I really think recommendations matter. And going back to my little chart here, recommendations get a big black circle. I think recommendations are important because look here at this analysis. They didn't cut the recommendation at all. Still, you need 3. Still, there's 4 questions, right? The 4 questions are up here. These are, in a sense, 4 stories or 4 mini essays of 250 words each or less. So this is a max of 1,000 words per letter. So this is times 3,000 words. These recommendation letters, I call them LORs, letters of recommendation. These references, these letters of recommendation, these LORs, whatever you call them, these reference letters, these things that are written about you by other people, could be as long as 3,000 words. Your required essays of Harvard, Essay 1 or Essay 2, are only 800. Do the math. References matter. They could have required 2. Some schools are starting to make them optional. They could have made them optional, or even they could have just gotten rid of them. They don't, and I don't think they will, because they matter. They matter, they matter, they matter. So pick the right people and support those people to make sure that the stories that they're telling about you are valuable, authentic, interesting, and impressive. To give a full picture of you, because look, you don't have much space to talk about yourself. So get those people to do it for you. Motivate them. to do a great job on your reference letter, because it does matter. Okay. Let's talk about interviews, which are at the bottom of my little chart here. Interviews with Harvard are not blind, they are comprehensive. There's two types of interviews, I guess you know that. My chart is handy here because you can see Columbia versus Harvard. Columbia is blind, they only use your resume. Harvard spends more money on it, and they fly their staff around the world. Your interview is only by invitation, unlike Tuck or Kellogg or some other top schools where you can request an interview on at your initiation. Harvard doesn't let you request one. They invite you or not. If they invite you, it's required that you attend. You either have to go to a hub city or you have to fly to Cambridge, which, by the way, I don't encourage. If they are inviting you to a hub, go to the hub, because the person at that hub is the decider, if you will, right? They are managing your file. It's regional, right? If you're in India, or you're in Asia, or you're in Europe, or in the US, they have hub interviews on the East Coast or West Coast. If you're really close to Cambridge, they're going to expect you to go to Cambridge. If they invite you to a hub interview and you're in Africa, don't fly to Cambridge to show your love of Harvard. It's expensive, it's wasteful, it's the middle of winter. They're really busy, if this is round 1 or round 2. It's a busy time of the year, but more importantly, the person who's at that hub, you're missing a chance to meet them. They're the one who's comparing you to all the other applicants from the Middle East, right? You want them to compare you to everyone else they interviewed in that hub. That's your competition. So it confuses the system. If you fly all over to Cambridge and someone else interviews you, then they have to tell the person who conducted the hub interview what they thought of you. And the hub person doesn't trust that other person quite as much as they trust their own judgment, because that's human nature. The only other thing I'll say about this is that for the first time, Harvard is now allowing a Skype interview, which I think is cool and interesting, and why not? It's 30 minutes, and it's with staff, and I already said that. It's a comprehensive interview, which means that they've read your entire file. And let me go back to me for a second and talk about this stuff, because I think I wanna see myself. Yeah, I want to be on the screen for this because I want to speak slowly. And also I want to have these numbers in front of me because I haven't memorized all of them, frankly. Rapid fire questions from Harvard. My clients that interview in Asia who are not native English speakers, it's an average of, they get asked an average of 10 questions. Average. My clients that are in India or the Middle East or other countries where English is expected, Europe as well, of course the US, Canada, Latin America, it depends on where you are, whether or not they're expecting you to have English as a primary language, a second language, or even bilingual situation. India, it's like 20 questions at least. So it's a 30-minute interview, 20 questions. Your answers are going to be 40 to 60 seconds. On average, because there's follow-up questions. So expect this. If you do mock training with me, I'll be sensitive. I'll prepare 20 questions. We may not get through them all in one session if it's a communication issue, and if you're just having a hard time getting your answers out, or if your answers are really, really long, we may not get to all 20 questions, but I'll prepare 20 questions because they prepare as many as 20 before the interview. When I say prepare, they are experts at this. They do this. You know, all the interviews are done by staff. I think, by the way, I think this is the way all schools should do it. But it's expensive, and I know they can't. But if they had the resources that Harvard has, all the schools would be, the people making the decisions about your file would be the one interviewing you. I think that's the best and most honest way. I think it's the most transparent, it's the simplest for them, and I think for you, the applicant, it's the most fair. Because there's quality control. There's quality control. All the schools that outsource this to their alumni, I understand why they do it. It's a lot cheaper. right? But there's just the quality control's not there. I hear horror stories all the time, and I help my clients address those issues and let admissions know if the interview was weird or if it wasn't in English. It's supposed to be in English. The interviewer may think they're doing you a favor. They might not want to speak English either, but it really should be, and it's unfair. Someone's was in English and someone else's was not. It's unfair. It's just not fair. The only way to make it fair is to have a very limited number of people conducting these interviews, and that's very, very expensive. So, anyway, prepare for rapid fire. I will give you rapid fire if I think you can handle rapid fire. That's the default, I think, if Harvard assumes and expects you to be able to handle that kind of very fast interaction because, again, watch the video if you can't visit Cambridge. Watch the case method. It is rapid fire. I've sat in on Harvard classes twice. Once because my buddy was there, my next door neighbor, and I was like, that's neat. I was in my mid-20s. I was in Boston area, Cambridge. I went to him with class. It was awesome. It was really neat, and it totally opened my eyes. And then most recently I visited some of my clients, and my client brought me to another class, and I sat in on the class. It's fast. It is rapid fire. Therefore, the interview is rapid fire. There's stuff on here, and there's lots more stuff on my website about about some strategies of how to deal with rapid fire. Have some core stories that you prepare. Have core keywords about your strength and your weakness. Have that sort of matrix in your mind so you're ready for unexpected questions. Harvard questions are, people say they're common sense. They're kind of common sense, but they're also kind of analytical. I mean, down below, I'll talk about some of their questions down here. Is this a common sense question? What preconceived notions did you have about something, one which turned out to be true and one which turned out not to be true? Is that common sense? Are we all ready to answer those kind of questions if they're thrown at us with a lot of follow-up? I reject the notion that it's just a casual chat about common sense. It's not behavioral. I mean, it's not artificially behavioral like I think Wharton has become a bit strange with their interview, and they're probably going to change it again. Watch my Wharton video for those tips about the Wharton interview, but Wharton might change it again, so who knows? It's a grab bag with the Wharton interview these last few years, and I hope they get that together, but sorry to talk about Wharton during my Harvard video. They're not McKinsey questions, how many ping pong balls in this room, right? Or you know, it's not case interview stuff, but it's rapid fire. They're testing your analytical skills. They're testing your ability to think and talk at the same time. And you can prepare for that. If you have some stories you would like to tell, you go into the interview with a kind of an agenda, but you're flexible. If you don't get the chance to tell your ice skating story, sorry, let it go. It's 30 minutes. Don't stick to that, oh, I didn't go through all these stories and I'm all nervous, I gotta tell 10 stories. No, you don't necessarily. And you have 3 or 4 weaknesses, but it's not a checklist. But it's a quick, oh, yeah, there is that thing about expectation management. I need to become better at managing. I work too hard. I assume too much for myself. I set standards for myself that I can't always reach. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. But it's especially bad with other people. I don't articulate my expectations for them, and as a manager, I need to improve that. That's a weakness. That's a story I could tell in 5 different ways. That's been true in college, professionally, personally, with my family. I could talk about that issue that I have. I could also talk about how I've managed that issue, how I'm handling that and growing. So it's not hopeless. I'm learning. It's getting better. I'm aware of it. So it's moving forward. That's a core weakness. I could talk about that 360 degrees, 5 different ways, 5 different times in my life. I've got that story. I'm very comfortable with that story. You can prepare this way. I think a silly way to prepare for the Harvard interview is to look at every question that's ever been asked. In that sense, it is common sense because they don't ask the same questions every time. It's not a set list of questions, check, 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 like some alumni interviews are, because that's what the school requires. Again, Wharton recently. I think that's one way to control for quality, but I think it's silly, frankly. unnatural and unrealistic, and I heard lots of reports that the interviewers couldn't handle it. There wasn't quality control. Again, I keep going. I'm comparing the Harvard interview and the Wharton interview because it's the most blatantly... here are two schools with 13% admit rates that are considered among the top in the world, and the way that each one handles their interviews is totally different. And I wish Wharton would be more like Harvard. Okay, end of story. Have these stories and prepare for them. Let me talk about the self-awareness questions. Something you should stop doing, keep doing, start doing, right? Tell me about some constructive feedback that you agreed with. And then tell me about some constructive feedback that you didn't agree with. Someone told me that I respected their opinion, I heard them out, I had to listen. It was my supervisor or somebody above me or somebody I respect and I trust, so I kept the relationship open, I kept the dialogue going, but I didn't just say, you know what, you're totally right. I didn't reject it, but I also didn't entirely agree with it. It was just a situation where there was a misunderstanding. I was being misunderstood. My intentions were being misread by someone, and I worked really hard to clarify that issue. And then the constructive feedback that they gave me, they still gave me constructive feedback, but it changed. It was a different type of constructive feedback because I clarified the misunderstanding that there was between us. So the way to prepare for these is to go back through your life choices. This is where the Harvard interview can become more like an HR interview, right? A job interview, which is a typical thing for a job interview, which you've been on them, I hope, or you will be on them during and after Harvard Business School. Why did you make this choice? Why did you do that? Why did you move to Japan, in my case, right? Why did you decide to do this admissions consulting work? Why did you leave your former company and make your own company? These are the questions someone would be asking me if I was applying for a job, which I'm not, or Harvard Business School, which I'm not. But those would be natural questions so if I'm clear on all of the choices I've made in my life and the reasons I made the choices, why I made them at the time, and then what happened looking back 5 years, the reasons I went independent. Looking back, I thought I was doing it for these reasons, but now I'm realizing there were all these other reasons that it was a good thing to do that I didn't think of at the time. Or, these three were right and those two were wrong, and I made the decision, and I'm happy I made the decision. I would have handled a couple things a little differently, maybe. And so I'm learning, I'm reflective about the things I do. Reflect on your life is my point. Be self-reflective. That is something that I do with my clients. That's something any good friend or critical friend or mentor or professional interview helper is going to get you to do. And finally, let me talk about the defensive thing. This is where some interviewers say things that sound kind of they make you react. They're trying to make you react. They want to see if you react in a way that sounds like this, where they say, some of my colleagues think that your job isn't really very difficult. Or some people in our committee, when we were talking about your file, or some of your recommenders say that you have a time management issue. What do you think about that? That's unfair in a way. Maybe if you didn't read the reference or you weren't party to the conversations. Of course you weren't involved in the conversations in Cambridge about your application, right? Of course you weren't there. You couldn't be. So they're referencing something that you're not aware of, maybe, and that always makes us nervous, right? Maybe you're getting that spam thing that I'm getting a lot now that's saying, like, somebody's saying something bad about you. Here, click this link. And it's a virus, right? Don't click it. But that's a very effective message because we always go, oh, what? Or like, somebody posted this damaging photo of you on Facebook. Click this link to see it. You're like, woo-hoo. You're going to click that, right? All the old scams aren't working. That's a good scam, isn't it? And I'm not saying Harvard interview is a scam. I'm just saying that that story of like, somebody's saying something bad about you. Really? Or you get mad. What? My job's not easy. My job's hard. What are you talking about? That's what they're watching for. So you should, instead of getting all about it, you should smile and say, interesting. I've heard that before, and I could see how somebody might have that impression. I guess I try to make my work, I do try to make it look easy, but here's why I think it's kind of challenging, and here's what I find challenging about it, and how I've grown in it, and here's what's interesting and not so easy about what I do. Maybe I didn't explain it well. Let me give it another try right now. You know, no edginess, no defensiveness, no, tension. Just, that's interesting. I've heard that before, and let me address that. Thanks for the opportunity. Just a very human exchange. If you get those curveball-y kind of defensive questions. And by the way, all three of these kinds of things is what I do in my mock interview training. I do rapid fire to see if you can handle it. I slow down if you can't, but I test you, because they do. I give you these kind of self-awareness questions to see if you can think like this, and I dig and dig and dig to see if you've really thought about it, or if you just said something convenient. And I do try to make you defensive. I read your entire application confidentially, and then I destroy it, and I read it and I say, what's the interviewer going to try to make her defensive about based on what I'm seeing here? What's the weak point there that I can poke at and see if they go, what do you mean? What I try to make you do that if it's a mock session, because it's going to happen in the real interview, 50-50 chance, 50% chance at least. So I throw it at you to see if you can handle it. And they're doing it, again, because in the classroom, nobody's going to say, well, I think you're wrong because we were just talking about it and you're wrong. No, it's not like that, but they say things that make you defensive because they challenge your beliefs about yourself and your opinions about the case. And it's going to happen in leadership situations too. Right? People will challenge you. People should challenge you if you're a leader. If you're going to stick around, you better be getting challenged by the people close to you, because otherwise you're going to miss something really important, and then something bad is going to happen. Usually, that's the way it works. So you need a tough, critical circle around you as a leader in an organization to keep you honest and keep you on your feet and keep you on your toes and keep you aware of things that you might be not seeing. So the last piece, and this is my exclamation point on my little chart, is the post-interview self-reflection. And then I'm using, in quotes, D. Leopold's thing from her blog where she says, it's not an essay. It's not an essay in the normal sense of things, but it is written English. You're not going to send a picture. It's not a movie. It's not a PowerPoint. It's a piece of writing. Here's what they say. Following the interview, candidates are required to submit a written reflection using our online application system. It has to come back to them within 24 hours. You're going to submit it. It's like an email, but it's actually you log in, right, to your page, and you have to type or copy and paste maybe your answer to this question. The question is, you've just had your Harvard interview. Tell us about it. How well did we get to know you? Open-ended question. I like this question. I think this is neat. And no limit. Really neat, right? They're testing your judgment. Are you going to write 7,000 words? Or are you going to write 2 sentences? Hopefully something in the middle. Look, their essays are around 400 words. I don't suggest you write exactly 400 words. That looks like you may have written it ahead of time, which she tells you not to do, and I will tell you not to do. Do not write this ahead of time. But, and here's my offer, practice writing it. So, here's what I'm going to do for Harvard interview training. This is brand new because Harvard's adding this brand new piece. In the past, if somebody signed up and paid me for 1 hour of training, we did a 30-minute mock interview based on the 20 questions I prepared. As many of them as we can get through, depending on how long your answers are. We do the 20 questions, or as many as we can do in 30 minutes. We stop, and then I say, okay, now relax. How do you feel? How do you think you did? And then I give you my assessment. What's good? What's bad? How to make it better? Right? I do that all in real time in an exchange, either through Skype video, whatever. From now on, I'm going to do that over writing, over attachments. We are going to do it over probably Microsoft Word, or the body of an email, I don't care. Here's how it's going to work. We'll have a 30-minute interview, and when it's over, I'll say, just like Harvard will say, thanks very much for your time. We'll be in touch, meaning like don't contact us. We'll contact you. Thanks. Bye. Nothing. Your homework in the next 24 hours, you will hear nothing from me, but I owe you 30 minutes of my time. You in the next 24 hours write everything you want to say about the interview with me as if it was real, right? You answer the same question, but you answer the question, tell Vince tell me how well I got to know you, right? We just finished our mock Harvard HBS interview. Tell me about it. How well did Vince get to know you? You tell me, and you can practice this, and you can send me your answer, and I won't fix your English, and I won't edit it, and I won't tell you, but I will give you my feedback. I agree that you I agree with you that this story wasn't very effective, but I don't agree with you that Like, I'll critique and I'll tell you where I agree with your self-assessment and where I think you missed something important. Yeah? We'll have a written exchange, and that in that way, and it takes 30 minutes for me to read everything you wrote, think about everything. I'll take some notes. That's billable time. After your interview, I'll spend a few minutes gathering my thoughts to be ready so I don't forget. I'll read your thing. That's all within 30 minutes, the 30 minutes of feedback time. I read what you sent me. I write my response to what you sent me. I don't edit what you sent me. I send you back my feedback. That's the other 30 minutes of the interview. And then so then it's simulating this experience for you to give you practice to write this real thing in real time after your real interview. Okay? That's my modification of my Harvard mock interview because Harvard has modified the requirement. How do I help people get admitted to Harvard? This is the last piece I'll talk about today. I mentioned it at the beginning. Critical thinking and storytelling. Critical thinking is nothing more than analytical thinking, breaking down problems into their components, down to their roots. It's exactly what I'm doing with these Harvard essays and other recommendation letters, and you look at what's said and you break it down. Analytical, critical thinking. The other thing about it is to detach yourself from, have a bit of a broader perspective about the material that you're working on, and also challenging conventional wisdom is another part of critical thinking. I love to challenge conventional wisdom to the point of probably annoying my friends and family, challenging everything. But critical, I am critical. I like to be critical. It's helpful to be critical. It's also sometimes not helpful to be critical. But in an admissions advisory situation, I think that's what you want, is critical. And I am critical within reason, and I try to be sensitive to what you, my client, or you, my audience, can handle. I try to be sensitive to that. I make mistakes sometimes, but I try to be very, very critical and also very, very helpful and practical to give advice to help you assess your situation. If I think that you're selling yourself short, a client will come to me and I think they have a good profile for Harvard and they say, I don't like the culture, it's so aggressive, I have a bad image of the school, and I often will say, just apply and see what happens. And a lot of times they might get in if I have that sense based on their profile. I do that a lot with not only Harvard but other schools. I often do say, why don't you think about this school? I think you might fit more than you think. You might be, go for it. If it's something you've ever thought you might do, try. I say that a lot. Storytelling comes from my training as an actor, doing improv theater, which is basically creative storytelling in a group with an audience, spontaneously, which taught me narrative structure, very efficient to break down, identify, and articulate storytelling that connects emotionally as well with an audience, as well as the critical thinking logic piece. Storytelling is very important. I wish I had more time to talk about it. I'm going to skip it for now. I don't think that's why you're watching. I'll probably make more stuff about my storytelling methods later. This is my summary of the Harvard. This is the summary of everything I've said. I'm going to leave it up here on the screen. It's on my website. I'm not going to repeat everything on this page because I want to get this under an hour. I am going to sign off. I'm going to thank you again for your time and attention. Please stay in touch and give me feedback. I want to make these videos better, and I wish you the best of luck in this process. Thanks a lot, and let me know if you need anything. All right, take care. Bye-bye.